Welcome to The Explainer. All right, let's just dive right into this one, because today we've got a fascinating case study that completely redefines how you set up a world-class audio system. We're looking at a brutal 16-hour acoustic rescue mission. The team at HTATC, led by a specialist named Ajarn Dong, traveled down to Ratchaburi to save a high-end project that had just gone entirely off the rails. I mean, they started at 11:30 in the morning and didn't wrap up until almost 4 a.m. And the kicker? It wasn't about blindly swapping out expensive cables or buying shiny new gear. It was about pure applied physics. That is exactly right. And you know, as someone who loves the intersection of engineering and audio, this explainer is a real treat. We're going to break down exactly how the HTATC team used math and geometry to fix a room that was just fundamentally broken.
Now, to really grasp the stakes here, you've got to understand just how frustrated this client was. It got to the point where he was ready to sell his 3 front speakers for just 45,000 Thai baht, which, if you know the market, is ridiculously cheap. He was literally ready to throw in the towel.
He really was. And what makes this so crazy to me is the sheer caliber of the gear he was running. We're talking premium M&K S150 speakers, a high-end Anthem AVM70 processor, a 200-watt Crestron power amp, and 2 massive Tone Winner subwoofers, a 15-inch and a 12-inch. For most audiophiles, that's the dream setup. But despite all that top-tier equipment, the sound was just abysmal. It was so completely lifeless that the owner couldn't even stand sitting in the room to listen to it. So, what actually went wrong?
Well, the root cause of this whole disaster comes down to what we like to call the musician's trap. See, the client, Kuna Off, is actually a real musician. He's a singer and a drummer. And because he was so used to spending time inside music rehearsal rooms, he just naturally assumed his home theater needed the exact same acoustic treatment.
Right, so he thought the room needed to be totally soundproofed and deadened, didn't he?
Spot on. A rehearsal room absolutely needs to absorb sound so the instruments don't clash and create this chaotic mess. But a home theater, that's a completely different animal. It actually needs natural reverberation to build that sense of space and immersion. But unfortunately, Kun Off got some really terrible advice from an unqualified installer who basically told him, the more acoustic foam you slap on the walls, the better. So he went ahead and covered his entire front wall in thick acoustic foam.
And when you do that, the physics instantly turn against you, leading straight to acoustic overdamping.
Which perfectly explains why the room sounded so awful, right? Because that foam doesn't absorb everything equally.
Exactly. Standard acoustic foam really only absorbs mid and high frequencies, so it effectively sucks all the life, all the sparkle, right out of those beautiful M&K speakers. The resulting sound is muddy, it's dark, it's totally dead. To give you a visceral idea of what that's like, imagine a world-class singer performing, but someone has their hand firmly clamped right over their mouth. That is literally what acoustic overdamping does to a high-end speaker.
Man, so the poor client's premium speakers were basically suffocating in his own wall treatments. So how did the HTATC team actually fix it? They went in and executed a rigorous math-based geometric surgery in 3 distinct steps. First up, they ruthlessly ripped out all that excess acoustic foam from the front and left walls just to let the room breathe again. Second, they utilized acoustic ray tracing. And finally, the third step was micro-positioning the speakers, physically adjusting them down to the millimeter. Actually, let's break down step 2 because the science here is absolutely fascinating.
So this is where the heavy science comes into play. The right side of this specific room was an absolute acoustic nightmare because it was basically an entire wall of glass. Now, most installers would just slap some foam somewhere on the glass and cross their fingers.
But Ajarn Dong and the HTATC team definitely didn't do that.
No way. They relied on geometrical acoustics. Since sound waves travel based on strict laws of physics, specifically the rule that the angle of incidence always equals the angle of reflection, Ajarn Dong calculated the exact sound wave paths. He used ray tracing equations to pinpoint the precise first reflection point on that glass wall. By knowing the exact millimeter where the sound wave from the speaker would hit the glass and bounce straight to the listener's ear, he could place acoustic treatment only exactly where it was needed, instead of just guessing and overdamping the room all over again.
That level of precision is incredible. But what about the speaker placement itself? The team ultimately settled on placing them exactly 1.09 meters away from the wall. Yeah, and they didn't get that number by just sliding the speakers around until things sounded okay.
They used lasers and mathematical formulas to calculate the SBIR, the Speaker Boundary Interference Response. Basically, if a speaker is too close to a wall, the bass waves actually wrap around the back of the speaker, hit the wall, bounce forward, and cancel out the fresh bass coming out of the front. So by calculating the exact wavelength of the frequencies they needed to protect, Arjandong determined that the front speakers had to sit exactly 1.09 meters from the front wall. That pushed the bass cancellation point completely out of the way.
Okay, so 1.09 meters makes total sense for protecting the bass. But later on, they made a microscopic 2-centimeter adjustment. Does a tiny shift like that actually matter in a room of that size? Oh, it absolutely matters, and it really highlights the HTATC team's brilliant scientific rigor. Remember that glass wall on the right side we were just talking about? Because they had to put acoustic treatment over the glass specifically at the reflection point, the acoustic properties of the right side of the room were now physically different from the left side, and that creates a tiny phase shift. So to perfectly compensate for this imbalance, Arjandong calculated that the right speaker needed to be pushed in by exactly 2 centimeters. It's true micro-positioning. And what was the result? It was instant magic. The moment they made that 2-centimeter adjustment and angled the speakers, the client was in absolute shock. The vocal track, which had previously been smeared all over the room, instantly snapped into perfect, holographic focus right dead center. It really is amazing how physics dictates literally everything we hear. But there is one thing that's still kind of bothering me. We mentioned earlier that the client had 2 massive subwoofers, a 15-inch and a 12-inch tone winner. With that much raw firepower, why was he complaining about having no bass?
The mystery of the phantom bass.
This is just a textbook example of phase cancellation. He had the 15-inch sub at the front of the room and the 12-inch sub at the back. Because they were essentially firing at each other from different distances without any sort of timing adjustments, their sound waves were colliding right at the main seating position. And when the peak of one wave meets the trough of another, they literally destroy each other. All that massive bass energy was just vanishing into thin air.
Wow. So how on earth do you effectively stitch 2 massive subwoofers on opposite sides of a room together? You bring in the heavy scientific artillery. The HTATC team fired up world-class acoustic analysis software called SMART V9. They weren't just using their ears, they were relying on hard data. They measured the exact time it took for the sound from the front sub and the rear sub to reach the main listening position. Then they applied time and phase alignment. They delayed the signal going to one of the subs down to the exact millisecond, guaranteeing that both waves arrived at the listener's ear at the exact same moment. And this brilliantly illustrates the flip side of phase cancellation, doesn't it? It sure does. They transformed phase cancellation into constructive interference. Instead of fighting each other, the front and rear subwoofers were now holding hands and pushing together. Suddenly, all that bass that was missing returned as one unified, massive, chest-thumping impact. And the ARC Genesis software calibration they ran afterwards revealed a really staggering piece of data: -9 decibels. Yeah, that number is just wild. Once the physical structure of the room was fixed and the subwoofers were perfectly timed to work in sync, they ran the room correction software. And the software realized that the 15-inch subwoofer was now so incredibly efficient and powerful in that space that it had to automatically dial its volume down by a full 9 decibels just to keep it from completely overpowering the rest of the speakers. It really just proves how much energy was previously being wasted fighting the room's bad acoustics.
So, to wrap up the technical surgery, Arjandong applied the proprietary HTTAC target curve. But here's the crucial part. He locked the maximum EQ correction at 120 Hz. He did this because he wanted to clear up the muddy low frequencies, but leave the beautiful natural mid and high frequencies of those M&K speakers completely untouched by digital processing.
And they didn't just walk away assuming it worked, right?
Oh, never. As a final verification, they pulled out an Earthworks M23R, which is a true reference-grade, world-class measurement microphone. They swept and measured the entire room one last time to scientifically prove without a shadow of a doubt that the whole system was perfectly in phase and in time.
Well, the ultimate proof is always in the listening. At almost 4 a.m., after the team had finally packed up, Kuhn Off sent them a text message. He wrote, "Can science and physics really fix it this much? It's exactly what I wanted." Man, that gives you goosebumps, doesn't it? Because he is a real musician. The second they fixed the time alignment and the phase, he instantly recognized the sharp, precise attack of the drum notes and the pristine clarity of the vocals. The HTATC team didn't tell him to go out and blow thousands of dollars on new amplifiers or snake oil cables. They just used geometry, physics, and precise measurements to unlock 100% of the potential his equipment already had. They truly transformed a room that was literally about to be sold for parts into a world-class listening studio. It's a huge testament to the fact that proper acoustic treatment isn't about just sticking foam on walls. It is a very precise science.
Absolutely. It completely changes how you look at a room with speakers in it.
Which brings us to our final thought for all you audiophiles and home theater enthusiasts joining us for this explainer. Yeah, take a good, hard look at your own setup, check the angles of your speakers, look at the treatment on your walls, and ask yourself, is your home theater built on guesswork or science?
Thanks for hanging out with us on this deep dive. Keep learning, keep experimenting, and we'll catch you next time on The Explainer.